Hey, what's up? EJK here, and we're going to be looking today at a TvZ game between Life and Forgg from Dreamhack Winter. It's going to be a mech game, so grab your popcorn. This is going to be a long video. JK, it's not. It's actually going to be a pretty short video because I picked this out for a special reason. Okay, good. It's on the right tab. Don't want to be looking at my face while I'm talking about this game. Anyways, I picked this game because Forgg is not known to be a defensive player. He likes to be aggressive, he likes to put on the pressure, and he likes to attack, and we're going to see that reflected in his mech play style. I'm also making this video about this video because I feel like there's a lot of mech versus Zerg games where the meching player often will, well, I'm not going to say the meching player will, but not through the fault of either player, but just because it's so easy to do and it's so powerful as well, to create a stalemate position and slowly mine out the map over a period of like 1 to 2 hours. If you don't like that, if you want to do something else with mech, then this is the style for you. If you're not sold, then watch the rest of this video. Lol. But really, this Forgg's style, he has the mindset that he can be aggressive on any map, including cross positions dead wing. And if he can be aggressive on cross positions dead wing, you can bet your ass that he can be aggressive on basically any other map, because cross positions dead wing is probably one of the longest spawning difference, or spawn timing, or no, what am I looking for? How long it takes to get across the map. Rush distance, that's it. It has one of the longest rush distances in the game. It's a word game. I'm getting better. Life scouted a little bit earlier with one Ling. He saw that Forgg had gotten a command center first. He also saw that he also doesn't have any bunker / marine defense, and he also didn't have a wall being completed. And so this is a standard 6-minute timing, so Life chooses to produce an extra round of Zerglings to try to punish Forgg from not walling off. However, we see Forgg, he ends up deflecting this relatively easily and takes no damage and ends up ahead in this game. Now, I'm not going to focus on the specific build order per se. I want to focus on the bigger fundamentals of what's going on in this matchup, or this style of this matchup. Yeah, this style in the matchup, the TvZ. So it's going to be big picture stuff. By the way, that's Forgg's scout right there. He was waiting to scout with the first 2 Hellions, but since Life did that Ling counterattack, he had to wait until his 3rd and 4th Hellions were out. But now he sees where Life is. He sees that there's a 3rd base, that there's 4 queens, so that Life isn't doing any sort of fast layer pressure, and that this is going to most likely go into a normal macro game. So there's no reason to really try anything special here, because Forgg is going to hit a relatively solid timing attack that is by no means an all-in, is by all means aggressive, and offers, basically, you only are sacrificing the command center, the 3rd command center timing, which coincidentally is going down about now. In return, you get to do a pretty hefty 2-base attack of Hellbat Banshee at around the 10-minute mark. Unfortunately, Forgg loses that. RIP. That was a very well placed spore by Life. You need a spore there, otherwise the Banshee can just sit around, and if you have a late layer, you have no detection, and it can pick things off, such as transferring drones and speedlings. It's a very good spot to position your Banshee if your opponent hasn't made that additional spore. We see also 1 spore per base as well is the norm. That's a very interestingly placed spore as well. Life is repositioning it now as we speak. But yeah, so just 1 spore per base and then 1 next to the rallying point. That's a pretty annoying Banshee picking off that spine crawler, because what Forgg is going to be doing now is he's just rallying units across the map. He hasn't done anything aggressive. He just poked with the Banshee a little bit earlier, but now he's transforming all of his units into Hellbats, and these now useless, or these once useless Hellions are now going to be badass Hellbats. We see Life getting the good scout that every good Zerg player needs to confirm that there is in fact mech going down by scouting with that Overlord around the 10-minute mark. But it's a bit too little too late. Life was kind of playing on autopilot, and he didn't see the multiple Hellions being made. He didn't see really anything, so as a result this attack is going to do more damage than it should. I'm not going to say significant damage. Life is able to clean this up relatively easily. That layer taking almost no damage is still at 80-ish% complete. One of the benefits of building your layer at the third base, increasing the HP pool by a significant amount. But we see Forgg with his third base already established, and what this attack did, more importantly, is slow down Life's economy. As we see to the left-hand side, 15 drones were killed. That's not enough to be a game ender. It is enough to slow down the fourth base. We see that Life has not started a fourth base, and for the way that he opened, he really should have started a fourth base around the 10-minute mark. So Forgg used that attack to create a check and balance so that Life couldn't be too greedy, and you normally want to open up greedily against mech so that you can try to end the game earlier, because going into that very, very late game when you have like a 200 army basically is really difficult to defeat. We see here Forgg is now just macroing up. He took a pretty good chunk out of Life's economy, Life's momentum, and Life's macro. So Life is going to be playing a little bit behind at this point. As we see here, these Banshees are going to put Life even further behind, which is not something that he wants to do right now. And Forgg is just skyrocketing ahead in supply. That's pretty normal because mech units are pretty high supply, but unlike roaches, they are more cost efficient. So we see here, since Forgg saw that Life had only Zergling, Baneling, Queens as defense, he's making 2 additional Thors to counter the Mutas. It's pretty common to do that. You would only really make siege tanks against a very fast 2-base attack with roaches that hits about like 10-11 minutes, but that Forgg attack earlier on at the 10-minute mark also confirmed that that was not a possibility as well. So going into the Thor is a very safe decision, and also need to be prepared against the Mutalisks, because Mutalisks, as we all know, are a great way of coming back into the game as a Zerg player. Even more drones dying now. If we open up the Workers Lost tab, I wish the observer would do that magically right now. I believe Life has lost about 30 drones from this harass. That's a lot of drones to lose against a mech player, and at this point we see, as still reflected in the supply, that Forgg has a very dominant position. He's also allowed himself, like when you have these kinds of, or when you deal these kinds of damage, rather than just sit back in your base and take a 4th, 5th base and tech up really safely and leave your army at home, another option that we see Forgg execute in a small bit around the time that 2-2 finishes and his pre-igniter afterburner finishes as well, is that he's going to be pushing out at about the 16-minute mark. The important parts of this timing is that Forgg's upgrades are kicking in. He's also going to be about maxed. You shouldn't really be maxed when you're pushing out, because it'll hit later. It'll mean counterattacks are a lot more effective. Notice how he's pushing out now when he still has reinforcements on the way to stop the counterattack. And he also is taking a 4th base behind this as well. So this is by no means all in. He's not pulling any SCVs or anything. I wouldn't mind seeing some SCVs being pulled. It's great for the auto repair, and they can potentially heal faster than medevacs, single groups of units. But either way, Forgg is in a pretty good position. Life is able to also recover as well, but because he took that economic damage, he isn't able to establish any bank. So I'm going to pause here because these are some very important points to go through. It's about 16 minutes into the game, and this push should hit around the time that you are close to maxing out 170, 180 supply, and that can be anywhere from the 15 to 16 minute mark. In some instances, you'll max out faster than others. Life is also maxed out, but he doesn't have a bank either. So one of the benefits of pushing out now is that you don't have to worry about large tech switches. And by that I mean, if you are pushing out now and you get a good positioning and you're starting to trade away units before the Zerg builds up a bank of, let's say, like 2 to 3k gas, it prevents the Zerg player from doing stuff such as switching into Mutalisks. So let's say if Life, for instance, had roaches and swarm hosts, and you targeted the Thors down, like he had some Vipers too magically as well, then he could tech into Mutalisks and wipe out the Siege Tank and Hellbat army, and then Forgg would be behind. But because he's hitting at this early timing, and he's done some damage too to prevent Life's bank from increasing, he doesn't have to worry about that. He doesn't have to worry about any tech switches either. So basically, Life has one army, Forgg has one army, and they're about even economy-wise. And by that I mean they're both gaining about the same amount of mineral income. Mules give a little bit more, but they should be on the same bases. I believe the fourth base. Yeah, there's a fourth base for Life. However, we see that Life's hive is a bit late. That also is reflected. That's a reflection from the earlier aggression that Forgg that ended up paying off. And this is really an attack because of what the earlier attack did damage-wise. This attack can still be utilized, however, it's going to be a lot more easily cleaned up if you haven't dealt a lot of damage like what Forgg has done and kind of slowed down Life's economy. Like, Life doesn't have a fifth base, his upgrades aren't as fast as he'd like them to be, his hive is also certainly very late, and he has no bank. That's how Life is slowed down right now, even though the game looks excuse me, relatively even. So with that in mind, we're just going to watch the fight, and Forgg's mech army is just going to absolutely crush through Life's Roach Infestor army. I was trying to think about reasons why Life had these infestors, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. They don't do nearly as much damage. Like, if he had swarm hosts, it would have been a hard hold because Forgg has 8 banshees, but the infestors are probably not one of the best units that you'd want in this kind of a situation, because fungal doesn't really affect the mech units besides hold them in place. I guess he was going to try to hold the infestors or hold the siege tanks in place and shoot at the siege tanks before they get sieged up, similar to what Vipers do, and because he was behind, he decided to go for infestors rather than, oh, my hand's in the way, infestors rather than Vipers. That's one possibility, but in general, Vipers are the better units because they can certainly prevent these types of pushes. They create them and swarm hosts. Like, that's a situation when you actually want swarm hosts so that you can stall for more time, so that you can kind of chip away at the army. The mech army can't reinforce very fast, so that one push that Forgg had, it's like a one big push. You're not gonna win on the next reinforcement wave. You pretty much have to do damage, or you're gonna end up getting cleaned up because you've been out on the map for too long. But yeah, so just a quick recap of the game, just to outline Forgg's basic game plan. He did a Hellbat Banshee timing around the 10-minute mark. It delayed his third base very slightly, but that's not too important for a meching player because we all know minerals aren't nearly as important as gas. So Forgg basically had that third command center in time to lift off and to saturate his third after he was already saturated on both of his 2 other bases with the gas already taken. So you don't really need to take a very fast third, because even if you do, well, I'm not even going to explain it. It's just not very useful because you simply can't saturate all of the minerals and all of the gas without sacrificing too much. So this timing, the third timing, isn't that big of a deal. And he ended up pushing across the map, and I wish Life really had a different unit composition. I disliked the one he had, but Forgg still pushed across the map and was able to take a good engagement, and Life instantly GG's because he was checkmated. This is basically a checkmate to the damage that Forgg dealt earlier on. And the damage really, it's gonna depend on how much damage you can get done, but generally speaking, you always want to try to hit a timing before the Zerg player has a bank accumulated, so that you can hit that Zerg army and kind of wipe the board, and you'll have units left because your mech army is superior, obviously, and the Zerg player won't be able to replenish like what happened to life. So that's pretty much the end of this video. I'm gonna keep watching these Forgg games. I didn't see all of the mech games, but I think he did play a couple other games similar to this, so I'm gonna keep an eye out for them and try to make a follow-up video to further explain this more aggressive, non-stalemate mech style that Forgg demonstrated to us at Dreamhack Winter. Peace out.